Hey guys, welcome back. This is Snazzy, you all-time favorite. Today we are gonna see what if Goku became a dragon warrior. So let's move on to the video. 2 weeks after the events of Rage of the Ifrit. It was a peaceful time in the Valley of Peace. Bandits had been told of the destructive and fierce battle that had taken place a few weeks earlier, so they had been scared off from trying to invade or destroy it. In truth, Mantis, Monkey, Crane and Viper were slightly bored by the lack of any activity by their usual villains such as Toti, Timotei or Feng Huang. Tigress and Po weren't though. They had recently found out that they were going to become parents in a few months, and this was all the excitement that they needed. It was exciting for the other masters too. They had never heard of a cross species of a panda and a tiger, so it would be a first for both China as well as the Valley of Peace. The Furious Five were currently in the training hall being well trained by Shifu, who had been Po's Kung Fu master for nearly 5 years now. Po, the soon-to-be father and resident of Dragon Warriors, was currently relaxing on the roof of his father's noodle shop, a Dragon Warrior noodles and tofu which Mr. Ping had named in honor of his son. The panda breathed in a lungful of fresh air and sighed peacefully. This is the good life, no bandits or megalomaniacs. I've got the best girlfriend and lover ever. I've got a child on the way, and best of all, oh, I've made you some noodle. Came Mr. Ping's voice from within the restaurant. I have noodles, Po thought happily. Times were indeed good for the Dragon Warrior. He hopped off of the roof and landed with a thud just inside of the entrance of the restaurant. Po grinned madly when he spotted Tigress through the flap that led to the kitchen. She was standing inside the restaurant discussing something with Mr. Ping. Po stopped for a second just to look at her. To Po, she had never looked more beautiful, and he had never been as madly in love with her as he had been upon hearing about the little one she now carried around inside her. Shifu had excused her from training ever since he had found out about their child. The old master has desperately tried to hide it, but both Tigress and Po could see that he was excited at the thought of becoming a grandfather to the child. Again, although he tried to hide it, Po could see that he was also nervous about becoming another paternal figure to a child. When he had been a father to Tai Lung, he had filled the snow leopard with such arrogance and anger that it eventually backfired and caused Tai Lung to wreak havoc on the valley. The second time was when he adopted Tigress and showed her no love or pride for fear of her becoming just like his previous son. This caused Tigress to become distant and pushed her further into her kung fu training. It wasn't until she had met Po that she began to open up and accept him and her comrades in the Furious Five as friends, and eventually come to love the panda. Although Po had protested desperately to the red panda he hadn't been excused from training, Shifu's reasoning was that he needed to be stronger so he could protect his soon-to-be family from threats in the future. Although for today Shifu had given Po the day off so he could spend it with both Tigress and his father, albeit after about an hour of begging and groveling. Po carried on gazing for a second before shaking his head and snapping out of it. He smiled to himself. Whoa, really got lost in the memories there. I mustn't take too long, Dad and Tigress are both waiting for me. Po slowly made his way inside. Upon entering the shop, his father smiled at him and handed him a bowl of steaming noodles. Tigress beamed lovingly at the sight of Po. She also had a bowl of noodles in her hands. Mr. Ping had invited Po and Tigress to come and share a meal with him. The old goose was excited about the thought of becoming a surrogate grandfather and took every chance he could to spend time with his son and the mother of his child. The panda, tiger and the goose all sat around a table that had been set up in the small kitchen specifically for these numerous recent visits. Thanks, Dad, said Po gratefully. He gestured towards Mr. Ping's part of the table. Aren't you having anything? Mr. Ping shook his head. No, Po, I'm not hungry. Po shrugged and then dived straight into his food. He started to greedily slurp and eat the noodles. Tigress smirked and shook her head in amusement. Seriously, Po, you've got to stop that so you don't pass your bad habits on to the baby. Po stopped eating and looked at her guiltily. Sorry, he said while wiping his mouth of the juice he had gotten on himself from the noodles. Mr. Ping chuckled at Tigress, scolding him like a small child. Tigress has to contain herself while eating. While she had attained a high level of discipline throughout her years of kung fu training, her condition had rendered her prone to cravings. Mr. Ping's special homemade noodle was a recent favorite of the Tiger Masters. Po was only too glad to indulge in her wanting of certain foods, as the panda loved eating just as much as kung fu or her. Mr. Ping beamed at the two of them happily eating. He had always loved watching people enjoying the food he made. So, Mr. Ping started. Have you thought about any names recently? The two soon-to-be parents suddenly stopped and looked at each other. No, Mr. Ping, we haven't really thought about it for a while. We thought a name might come to us after the birth, responded Tigress. In truth, neither of them had really thought about it before now. The old goose smiled. He knew how difficult it was coming up with a name for a child. Having raised Po, he knew how important it could be for a child. It could define so much of you. Po put his noodle bowl down on the table carefully. How about we brainstorm for names right now? Tigress nodded with a small smile, as did Mr. Ping. They all sat in silence for a moment. How about Ling Wang? Suggested Po. Mr. Ping shook his head. Don't be silly, Po. It sounds like a name you would give to a baker. You don't want to choose their jobs for them. Tigress looked bemusedly at Po. This was much more complex than she had ever thought it was going to be. What about Peng? Suggested Tigress hesitantly. Again, Mr. Ping shook his head. You're just asking for trouble by naming him after Tai Lung's nephew. Do you want him to take over the valley? Po frowned. Okay, Dad, geez, we're new to this stuff. What would you suggest? Mr. Ping leaned forward on his chair dramatically. Li Nu, he said with wings outstretched. Tigress looked at Po and smiled. The lotus flower, it's a beautiful name, she said, pleased with the suggestion. Po nodded excitedly. That's a good girl's name, but we need to come up with a boy's name just in case it is one. Po and Tigress sighed. Parenting was turning out to be a lot more difficult than people would ever make out. They were just about to continue their discussion when a small object crashed into the kitchen and landed on the table, destroying it. Po and Tigress jumped out of their chairs to combat their attacker, but recoiled at the sight of him. He was a small white creature with a monkey tail, strange black fur on his head, and he was wearing orange chi. It started to groan and rub its head. When it noticed Po and Tigress's shocked faces, he spoke in a cheerful manner. My name's Goku, who are you? Meanwhile, in a different galaxy altogether. 2 years after losing to Jackie Chan in the 21st World Martial Arts Tournament and about 5 minutes before crashing into the kitchen. Goku was sleeping underneath a tree. His loud snores reverberated throughout the dense forest. Goku, as instructed by his master the Turtle Hermit, had been training by himself for the past 2 years. Goku was unusual for most boys, as he was extremely powerful and had a long monkey tail growing out of his back. He had spiky black hair and he wore orange chi with the turtle insignia on the back of it to show the average person which school of martial arts that he belonged to. Goku had been working very hard in order to exceed his limits and to finally become strong enough to defeat Jackie Chan. The thought of fighting the powerful old man again made the boy very excited. The flying nimbus and the power pole were both laid next to Goku underneath the tree. The flying nimbus was a yellow flying cloud that could only be ridden by the purest of hearts. It had been granted to Goku by his master. The power pole was a keepsake given to the monkey-tailed boy by his grandfather before his untimely death. Goku finally stirred and woke up. He scratched his head and yawned. Oh boy, he said excitedly, another day of training. He hastily got up, grabbed his power pole and jumped onto the flying nimbus. He was going to find the spot where he often trained. It was by a large waterfall with many rocks by it. The flying nimbus slowly ascended into the sky. When it reached a certain point, it shot off quickly into the distance. Goku loved the feeling of going fast and the feeling of the wind against his face. Suddenly Goku was struck from behind by an unknown assailant. He started to plummet towards the ground. He made himself upright in midair and called out to the flying Nimbus to catch him. Nimbus! He yelled in panic. He heard a noise underneath him and saw some kind of portal open underneath him. Goku braced himself for some kind of heavy impact. He went through it and quickly saw three figures in a kitchen before crashing headfirst onto a table inside of it. Goku was winded for a second. He turned himself onto his back and groaned while scrubbing his painful head. He looked up and saw a panda, tiger and a goose looking at him with shocked expressions. Goku was silent for a second before greeting them in his usual cheerful manner. Hi, my name's Goku, who are you? The panda moved his arm in front of the tiger. Who are you? How dare you try and attack us? Yelled Tigress. Goku stumbled to his feet and looked oddly at the pair of them. They looked just like animals, but they were walking on two legs and they were talking to him. The tiger was wearing what appeared to be a red training vest while the fat panda was just wearing shorts. Goku also noticed a small elderly goose trying to move out of the way of the tiger and the panda. Bo put his arm protectively in front of Tigress. He knew she could protect herself, but it was more the baby's safety he was looking out for. Who are you? How dare you try and attack us? Tigress yelled. The creature got up and looked oddly at the two of them. He was quite small, only barely coming up to Po's chest. In truth, Po was wary. He couldn't feel anything evil from it, but he was prepared all the same for a fight. Answer her, ordered Po. Like I said, my name's Goku, answered Goku. Po frowned. Savior of life? That seems a bit arrogant, Tigress replied. What about Sun Wukong? That'd be a good name for a boy, said Mr. Ping excitedly. Po glanced at his father. Not now, Dad. He looked back towards the boy with a cocky grin. I'm in a good mood because I'm with my family, so if you leave now I won't have to fight you. To Goku, one word stuck out in that sentence. Can you guess which one? You want to fight? Goku started to grin madly and get excited. Does that mean you were strong? Po laughed. Ha, didn't anyone tell you who I am? He struck a pose. I'm the Dragon Warrior buddy and I'm here to power pole extend. Yelled Goku. Wikwa, the pole smacked Po in the face and sent him to the ground hard. Po groaned and clutched his face. The pole packed a wallop and Po could feel the onset of a bruise start to form on his face. Mr. Ping ran over to check on his son. Po, are you okay? He said worriedly. Po rubbed his face painfully. Yeah, I'm fine, he glared angrily, but he won't be now. Po looked at Tigress, who looked ready to pounce at Goku. Stay out of this, Tigress. I don't want you two to get hurt. Get the villagers out of the area. I have a feeling this is going to be rough. She nodded reluctantly and guided Mr. Ping outside of the restaurant. Po got into a stance, as did Goku. Okay, now you've asked for it, buddy. Po posed dramatically again, prepare to feel the thunder. Upon yelling his battle cry, Po threw the separated table leg at Goku. The boy ducked and it embedded itself the wall behind him. Power pole extend. Yelled Goku again. The orange staff quickly launched itself at Po again, who caught it and pulled Goku towards him with it. He clotheslined Goku in midair and threw him heavily against the ground. That's not going to work on me twice, Po said cockily. Goku quickly recovered and swept Po's legs out from under him. Po bit his tongue in surprise and fell on his back. Oh, you jerk, you made me bite my tongue. He yelled in pain. Tigress and Mr. Ping were outside panting heavily. I've really got to start training again, said Tigress, who was out of breath for the first time in years. She heard the sounds of their fighting and grew concerned. Po hadn't trained seriously in a while, so he might be slightly out of touch. She turned to Mr. Ping. Mr. Ping, can you get yourself to safety? I'm going to check on Po. Mr. Ping shook his head furiously. No, Tigress, I can't let you go and fight in the shape you were in. Tigress glared at the goose, who held her face in his ground. She eventually sighed and gave in. They were about to leave when she suddenly got on all fours and quickly left Mr. Ping on his own. Tigras waits. He yelled in panic, he frowned. Stubborn tiger, I should go and get Shifu and the others. Mr. Ping left as fast as he could to go to the Jade Palace and gather the rest of the Valley Defenders, the Furious Five. Goku and Po were still fighting fiercely, neither one was giving an inch to the other. Goku swung Po around by his arm and threw him through the roof of the kitchen into his old room, which had only recently been rebuilt due to another fight that he'd had there. Po's tongue had quickly healed from its earlier punishment, though he hadn't spoken in case he still sounded ridiculous. Po gasped at the impact of hitting his room's ceiling and then hitting the floor. Goku leaped up to him but was quickly struck down by one of the makeshift staffs that the panda had made when he was younger. Po swung the staff around his body. It wasn't part of the bear style, but he'd had enough practice over the years that he was proficient enough with it. He pointed the end towards Goku, who was getting up from Po's attack. "You're pretty good, what was it, Goku? But you're not going to beat me. I've fought rogue kung fu masters, megalomaniacs, suits of armor that have come to life, and even an evil version of myself who had a cool scar across his right eye. What about you?" Goku coughed at the dust now surrounding them. "I've fought in a tournament full of the greatest fighters on Earth, and I've fought the greatest martial arts fighter on the planet." After the two had finished comparing notes, they started to circle each other around their admittedly small arena. There was another lull before Po threw the amateurishly made weapon like a javelin towards his opponent. Goku jumped, caught it with his tail, passed it to his right hand and broke it in two just using his right hand. Po whined like a child. "Oi, come on, that took me like 4 days to make that." Po slid towards Goku, who leaped over the panda. Goku aimed a kick towards Po's face, but Po blocked it by guarding his face with his forearms. He pushed Goku upwards and launched himself up to deliver a hard kick to Goku's midsection. The boy gasped at the admittedly strong blow, but it didn't stop him from recovering quickly and punching Po in the face. The two fell back into the kitchen. "Oh boy, I've got to take this fight outside. Dad's not gonna be happy at having to rebuild his shop twice in only a couple of weeks." "Hey Goku, what'd say about taking this fight outside? We've totaled this place and I'd rather not get yelled at by my dad." Goku nodded. "Okay then." Po went to exit the shop calmly, but Goku picked him up. "I meant we could just walk." Goku threw him out into the street. Po crashed into an apple cart that had been abandoned by the villagers that Tigras and Mr. Ping had warned off. Apples spilled everywhere across the street. It was at this point that Po heard his stomach rumble. Whether in actual hunger or just in protest at the thought of getting injured more, nobody knew. Po got up, groaned painfully and patted his soft, round stomach. "Not now, buddy," he thought affectionately. Goku jumped out of the now almost completely wrecked shop. It looked much worse from the outside. "Wow, mister, you're really strong. I haven't had to go all out in quite a while," Goku said proudly. "Well, I'm not beaten yet," Po said while panting heavily. The fight continued, with the two exchanging and receiving many blows from each other until Goku moved so fast he disappeared. Po paused and gasped, "Wait, where did you go?" Po felt a change in the wind, so he threw a punch towards where his gut told him to. He used all of his strength in one last desperate attack. Po could have cried with relief when he saw that Goku had suddenly appeared on the end of his fists. Spit flew out of Goku's mouth and he struggled to catch his breath because of the strength that had come from the flabby panda. Po had butted him and threw him down the street. Goku skidded along on his face before colliding with a stone wall. Po knelt down to catch his breath, naive in thinking that he had won the intense battle. That was tough. He's one of the most powerful people I've ever fought for someone so young and small. A thick layer of dust fell about the street from the building Goku had just crashed into. "Oink, no choice, I have to do it," Goku thought desperately. The dust finally settled and Po squinted to see where he had got to. Po's jaw dropped. How did he get up from that? "I put everything I had into that punch." The panda looked at the boy's unfamiliar pose. "What's he doing?" "That not like any pose I've ever seen before, but it does look cool." "Kami." Po felt a huge rush of wind gathering around Goku. He looked up and saw the clouds turn dark. A blue ball of energy formed inside of Goku's palms. It didn't look threatening though. It looked serene and calm, unlike Goku's expression, which was now for the first time serious and focused. Homie, Goku gritted his teeth and tried to maintain the energy. Because he was tired and injured, this was a last-ditch effort to win. I've got a bad feeling about this, Po thought worriedly. He became determined to stand his ground. Po planted his feet down and held his arms in front of his face like he did earlier. Ha! Goku yelled. He put his palms in front of him and a wave of energy exited them. Po felt the huge wave hit him. It was the single most intense feeling he had ever had in a fight. The effort it took to block the attack was intense and took all of Po's willpower and strength just to stop himself being overtaken by its majesty. Goku was quickly losing energy. I hope this guy gives up soon. I can't keep this up much longer. The Kamehameha engulfed the two of them and a bright light overtook the valley. Shifu and the others paused in the training hall. Master, did you feel that? Asked Crane worriedly. Shifu nodded grimly. I did indeed, Master Crane, but what caused it I have no idea. Shifu signaled the others to continue their training, but Shifu grew worried at the thought of Po and Tigras being caught in the middle of it. He would keep an eye on the situation for now. Tigras rounded the corner quickly to see how Po was faring against this mysterious opponent. She had felt that huge force from a couple of streets across and immediately knew where to find the two of them. Tigras saw Po's unconscious form and the boy who looked like he was about to collapse from exhaustion. Tigras gasped and leaped to Po's defense. Enough! She yelled angrily. She threw a quick jab at Goku, who barely dodged it. Wow, this one's strong and fast, Goku thought. He went to hit Tigras back but was suddenly stopped by a big paw. Po snarled at Goku, don't even think about hitting her. She's pregnant, and if you think I'm gonna let you hurt my family, kid, then you don't know how wrong you are. Po threw him away, but Goku landed gracefully on his feet. The monkey boy gasped and bowed to Po. His well-known morality started to kick in. I'm so sorry, mister, I didn't know. Tigras put a paw on Po's shoulder to calm him down. It thrilled her to hear Po say that he considered her part of his family now. Why did you do that, Tigras? I told you to stay out of the way, Po said sternly. He was grateful for the backup, but he didn't want to see her get hurt. Tigras frowned. Well, sorry, but you were getting badly beaten. I had to help you out, otherwise our child might have grown up without a father. She yelled while jabbing a finger into his fluffy chest. Goku watched the two argue in surprise. What are they doing? He suddenly realized the lack of energy. Po pushed Tigras's hand away from him. I'm fine. But you've got to stop taking risks for the next couple of months. Tigras. Po bit his lip. It's not just your life that matters to me now, he said softly. Tigras sighed and placed her paw on his soft, fluffy cheek. Po, I'm okay, she said. Tigras turned to Goku. So Goku, why did you try to attack us? Goku's eyes rolled up into his skull and he suddenly passed out from the fatigue of the battle catching up to him. Tigras gaped at him in shock. He passed out. What she heard a thud come from behind her. She turned to Po and saw that he had also passed out from fatigue. Po! She yelled in concern. She rushed over to him and checked for a pulse. Thankfully she found one. Just exhaustion. That battle was incredible. I could feel the energy and the force of it all from only a couple of streets away. Tigras looked over towards the unconscious Goku. That boy is so strong. Tigras looked down at Po and started to beam with pride, as is Po, when he is fighting for his loved ones. She heard the five gather nearby. She smiled at Mr. Ping's quick thinking, but frowned when she realized he was going to yell at her later for ditching him to go and help Po, going completely against both of their wishes. She couldn't help it. She had been a warrior for so long that she didn't know how to be anything else. Whoa, what happened here? Asked Mantis. He looked at Goku. And who's that? Tigras stood up. I'll answer your questions later. Get Master Shifu down here and bring a healer with you. Mantis nodded quickly. Him and Monkey split up to get both parties. He's going to want to see this, said Tigress, referring to Goku. Shifu inspected the scene earlier than him, an unconscious Po and a strange opponent. Who is that? He requested, Tigress even as gesturing together with his head closer to Goku. Tigress turned into and were standing inside the identical spot for approximately 10 minutes now, waiting for her master. She desired Po's accidents to be visible too, however she knew it turned into vital to make certain that Goku wasn't a threat first. It became hopefully what Po might do, and her state of affairs have been the occasions reversed. He said his name was Goku, she spoke back. Shifu nodded, walked over and quickly inspected the two, then grew to become on his heel and began to walk again. As much as the palace, bring each of them as much as the barracks. They may be merely subconscious and ought to be wakeful within the hour. Po can pass to your room, Tigress. Wait with him till he awakes. Shifu then grew to become to the furious five, who have been all burning with questions about the mysterious youth, like who become he. Why changed into he right here? And why did he have a tail? I need you four to break up yourself into teams. One to take Goku into Po's room to recover. The two that do this could then wait with him in case he wakes up. The other two will carry Po up to the barracks. Mantis whined, but why? He's so heavy. Tigress glared at him for insulting Po. Mantis wilted under the warrior's dreaded stare. Shifu smirked at the display. Indeed, grasped Mantis, he subsequently answered, this is why the two biggest of you four will elevate him up there. Tigress can't do it in her gift circumstance. Tigress folded her arms and rolled her eyes at her presently being detailed so vain. Mantis yelled fortuitously, woohoo! Not me. The opposites looked at every different nervously. God, I'm hoping that you could all come to some type of agreement, said Shifu bemusedly. He knew there could be an inevitable combat over responsibilities, but he was positive Tigress would sort them all up. Shifu then hobbled off to the palace to attend till Goku woke up so he should question him. While he was out of earshot, the four at once commenced to argue and combat. Tigress sighed and whistled loudly. The others all stopped and looked at her. Okay, Crane and Monkey, you take Po up to my room within the barracks and wait in there until I arrive. The two nodded and went over to get Po. The distaste and inflammation at their result turned into obvious. Mantis tried now not to smirk at his good success. Tigress saw this and grinned heavily. Okay, Viper, you are taking Goku as much as the palace. I am certain you can manage this with the aid of yourself. He isn't always that heavy. The snake smiled and nodded. Crane and Monkey had begun to lift Po up the now not possible searching staircase. They were quick overtaken with the aid of Viper. Mantis checked out the three who'd been assigned function, then looked Tigress, who was giving him an unusual appearance. Now Mantis, you can pass and help the villagers with the smooth up, she stated. Mantis's function straight away fell, and Tigress felt delight in put her and punishing him for his laziness and for his insults towards Po. It felt appropriate to be again in fee for the first time in more than 1 week. He nodded silently and dragged his Athinges sullenly all of the manor into the village to begin his challenge. Tigress looked in the direction of the village. Elements of it were destroyed through the conflict, however nobody were harmed because of Po's short questioning in advance. But there has been one villager who Tigress cared the most about and whom she had to realize turned into very well before going to check on Po. She quickly, however lightly, walked again into the village to go and locate Mr. Ping. Tigress fast padded towards the noodle store. She knew this was where the goose might pass to check on what had ended up of his treasured business. Like she anticipated, upon arriving on the place she saw the slouched over shape of Mr. Ping looking indignant at the damage executed to his status quo. Tigress shook her head. This is occurring ways too often to him. First Tai Lung broke it, then Liu and Po did not pose destroyed it again. She walked over to him and organized herself for his anger. Mr. Ping, are you okay? He turned sharply and breathed a sigh of remedy when he noticed that she became okay. He fast ran over to her and hugged her leg, catching her completely by using Marvel.
Tigress knelt down and then hugged him returned. However, whilst she pulled away, Mr. Ping hit her inside the head along with his wing. It failed to hurt, but Tigress clenched her fist in anger. She knew it was deserved for completely leaving behind him earlier.
You stupid woman, how could you try this to me and Po? Simply throwing you and your baby into the fierce battle. What if something had came about? Like if to procure hurt, Po might be devastated in addition to your buddies and me. You furthermore might you Po may want to take care of himself, but you decided to just be reckless due to the fact you overlooked the field of warfare failed you. He yelled. Tigress flinched. She had in no way had a father discern yell at her like this, so she failed to definitely realize a way to react. She determined herself unable to meet his gaze, so she as an alternative simply seemed towards the floor in a deep distress. I'm sorry, Mr. Ping, however I had to know if Po become alright. We have never visible whatever like that warrior earlier than even Shifu does not recognize something about him. I was simply concerned approximately, and she said surely. The goose's gaze softened, however he nevertheless had that steely glint which turned into connotative of anger towards the tiger grasp. He finally sighed and dropped his glare. Okay, I can admit I would have finished the equal factor for your place, but this doesn't excuse you. Next time this happens, don't forget you've got your pals and Shifu who permit you to and help to protect each Po and you, okay? He said softly. Tigress smiled and nodded. She then stood lower back up and appeared toward the Jade Palace. Mr. Ping, I suppose it might be an excellent idea in case you got here and stayed with me, Po, Shifu and the five on the palace, simply in case something like this occurs once more, K. He nodded but then chuckled. It is now not like I've a whole lot of a preference, is it? He said at the same time as gesturing along with his thumb toward the wreckage of his as soon as excellent noodle eating place. Tigress chuckled with him and then started to steer the manor back up in the direction of the Jade Palace, where she might cross and look forward to Po to awaken. Crane and Monkey panted heavily upon dumping Po on Tigress's bed. The two then collapsed to the floor. Wow, why is Po still so heavy after training for goodbye? Requested Crane to no one specifically. Monkey wiped a bead of sweat away which had been coming near his eye. I do not know. But it makes you surprise how heavy he may have been whilst he first got here, right here, without any of the schooling. The two shared fun earlier than figuring out to test out the atypical boy who turned into presently contrary them across the hall. They opened the door and fixed their heads interior. They noticed Viper laying him down and pulling Po's sheets over him, ever the considerate one. She left him dressed so he could have a few feel of dignity and privacy. Monkey and Crane quick rushed in and leaned over to look at him. Viper acknowledged her comrades, however didn't do it vocally so as now not to wake Goku. Both as it was polite not to and due to the fact she turned into curious as to why the monkey-tailed boy seemed so abnormal. Monkey poked Goku's stomach together with his forefinger. He would not appear to be any species that I have ever visible. How approximately you men, he said quietly. Crane cupped his beak together with his wing in notion. No, me neither, though I do see a mild resemblance to you, Monkey. Monkey checked out him in surprise. You do? He appeared again in the direction of Goku and shook his head. No, I do not see it. Okay, it is sufficient. You wait outdoor till you pay attention and wake up. When you do pass and get grasp Shifu so we can find out who he is and in which he came from, stated Viper. Crane and Monkey nodded and they all left. Afterward that day especially past due evening, Goku and Po had woken up hours in the past. Tigress had waited with Po for the past few hours and had explained to him what Shifu had ordered them to do. Po became sincerely awful at being patient and began to pace approximately, waiting for while he ought to talk to Goku. It was extra irritating for him due to the fact he knew he become most effective throughout the corridor. Tigress became sat looking to mediate on the grounds. She had determined it beneficial to maintaining her Kung Fu kingdom of mind, and for instances like this while Po could be pretty worrying. Goku have been left on my own by using request of Master Shifu, who desired the boy to experience settled in and care after they had been to talk to him. Good enough, Po. Please stop doing that. It's very hectic, said Tigress, gritting her teeth. Po gasped. It became clear he were deep in notion and had forgotten that she become even there. He smirked guiltily and nodded. Tigress closed her eyes again to renew her meditation, but her forehead furrowed when she felt breath on her face. She gasped when she opened her eyes and saw that Po became now unexpectedly right in front of her. Should you cross and spot him, Shifu might not get angry with you, he asked with neediness in his voice. Tigress picked herself up. Why is it so important as a way to move and talk to some who beat you up so badly, she said whilst smirking at him. Tigress hoped resorting to petty insults would deter him, however she forgot how chronic he may be. Tigress, you didn't see him. I should slightly maintain up, and he used a few ordinary assault towards me. He got near once more. I just want to combat him once more and to recognize where he got that splendid schooling. Tigress sighed. High quality. I'll go and ask him. She quickly were given up and left Po with bated breath. Tigress confronted Po's room with a small experience of apprehension toward Goku. He became a difficult one to judge. Tigress had never seen all and sundry like him, both due to his strange appearance and due to the air of mystery he gave off. She went to knock, however, determined to just open the door and input. Upon entering Po's room, Tigress checked Viaduct, looking at him. Whether Goku regarded like a bad kid, she couldn't sense anything terrible coming from him. This instilled a peculiar feel of déjà vu for her. The boy reminded her quite a few Po. They had been each goofy, however had a relaxed heart and a love of combating. Glad together with her short evaluation of him, she approached. Tigress knelt next to the bed and checked Goku for any accidents. Goku started to transport about in protest. Let me go, I wanna move, see your valley. Tigress frowned to herself. Lay still, I want to make sure you're first class earlier than I will let you move. Then you definitely need to discover if you kind of hide. Why? Requested Goku. Tigress smirked. Me and the other masters see extraordinary matters all the time, so this wasn't an excessive amount of a shock as compared to most matters. However, the people down inside the village have in no way seen a creature like you, so we are just being cautious. In the end, you wouldn't need to scare anyone. Goku nodded. Say, am I able to ask you a question, Tigress? She nodded hearts away. Goku kicked her inside the crotch gently. Are you a boy or a female? Tigress froze completely in location and blushed furiously. She leaped away to the alternative side of the room. What do you observe you're doing? She hissed angrily. It changed into hard to tell whether or not she turned into greater indignant or embarrassed. Goku seemed oddly at her, as though this turned into a completely everyday component to do. I am seeing whether you're a boy or a lady. Tigress slowly stomped over to him, pulled back her fist, after which punched him within the face. Goku flew out of his mattress and crashed into the wall. I am a girl, you idiot. Po already informed you I was pregnant and my call is Tigress. How good deal extra of an illustration do you want? She yelled angrily. Goku clutched his new damage painfully. Sorry, geez. You don't should be so imply about it. Tigress growled at him, but she calmed down at his childlike naivety. She huffed irritably, opened and then slammed the door to Po's room and walked off, returned to her personal room. Goku checked out the door that the very angry Tigress had just slammed. Why is it whenever I do this I am getting hurt? He sighed to himself. Earlier than delivering and figuring out to sleep, the fight in advance becomes severe and he became still exhausted from the exertion of it all. While she became inside, Tigress folded her fingers and blushed heavily on the nonchalant way with which he had simply accomplished that. Fool child, she growled internally. From the mattress, Po grew to become over to Pierre, who had simply entered the room. When he saw it become Tigress, he beamed, which then slowly faded away after looking Tigress's expression. Po checked out how flustered and angry Tigress appeared. What's it? He asked innocently, even as smirking. She scowled at him and immediately a wave of fear hit him, and Po right away stopped and smirking and scooted over so she should lay subsequent to him. He became over and wrapped his arm around her waist protectively. You okay? He asked nervously. Pleasant came the answer rapidly and sharply like a blade. Po grew braver. You wanna talk abo? No, Tigress stated coldly. Po frowned and nuzzled his head between her shoulder blades. Hey, then he said, resigned to defeat. However, earlier than he slept, he decided to say one more component which may get him killed. Night Kitten, Tigress's students dilated in shock at being called that hated no detested nickname. She quickly became over and pinned Po down. She out her head close to his. Do not name me, that she stated. When Po nodded silently, she smirked heavily and kissed him. Desirable, Tigress stated. She hopped off of him, resumed her function and grabbed his arm and placed it returned where it had been. Po in the meantime turned into smiling. I love her a lot, he thought dreamily. Day broke over the valley, the sun shone in through the open window and onto Goku's face. Within the room opposite, the equal aspect had came about to the dragon warrior. Both their eyes snapped open and they got up. Po looked at Tigress and smiled. He stroked her paw before leaving to get something for both of them to consume from the kitchen. Goku connected the strength pole to himself over his chi. He gasped when he realized what he become lacking. Nimbus. It fell in with me, I need to locate it. Master Roshi would not be glad if he determined out that I misplaced it. Goku resolved to invite his new pals whether or not they may assist him find the magical flying cloud. It could not or becoming a ways. As if on cue, Goku's belly rumbled and he ought to sense himself start to get susceptible. I have never eaten since before I got here. If I don't get something to consume soon, I'll bypass out and die. He heard some motion outside and determined to comply with them in the hopes of finding the kitchen or with any luck finding something to eat.
Bo entered the kitchen and started out to root via the cupboards so he should make a few bean buns for him and Tigress. It took him no time in any respect to finish making them and to position them on a plate.
He became round to grab a few condiments, and whilst he became lower back round, he saw that some of the buns had disappeared. Po frowned and regarded about the kitchen. He suspected a thief, but he most effective needed to look up and he might have visible Goku hanging from the ceiling eating of them. Goku had reached down together with his long tail and stolen of them whilst the panda's back was became. He chewed and gulped them greedily, savoring the simple however scrumptious taste of them. He's a pretty proper prepared dinner. Goku thought excitedly, the panda may want to fight and cook dinner, what a combination. Whilst Po looked through the cupboards and pantries again for the perpetrator, Goku crept off back to the room. Weird, maybe I failed to make as many as I concept I did. Well, there's nevertheless sufficient for me and Tigress, so I'll just convey them into her. Po picked the now lighter plate and brought it into Tigress's room, wherein stated Tigress turned into now conscious, yawning and stretching. Excellent morning, Po, she said softly. Her smile widened at seeing the present that he had introduced her. You study my mind, Panda, she stated while padding over to take a few. Po held the plate out as she took a few. Tigress took a chew out of one and hummed thankfully to expose her content. Tigress gulped. These are honestly proper, Po. The dragon warrior grinned, sat down on the mattress and started to assist himself to his spoils. Tigress ate a few greater and then rubbed her stomach affectionately. It had only been a short while, however, she becomes starting to sense the consequences of the child internal her. Po supplied her some greater, which she commonplace gratefully. It surprised the both of them to see how hungry Tigress absolutely become. They finally finished and Po positioned the plate down. Tigress wiped some of the flour that had fallen off of the bun off of Po's cheek. He smiled gratefully and felt her belly. I cannot wait till I will be capable of experience a kick, he stated cheerfully. Tigress placed her paw over his. Me too, she agreed. The two have been interrupted by Shifu commencing their door. Right morning, you two.
We are all meeting in the kitchen with Goku for something to consume. After that we will speak to him in the Hall of Heroes.
Po stood up and helped Tigress to her fort. The two accompanied Shifu into the kitchen and Po gasped whilst he noticed Goku sitting in his typical spot. The two met with glances and the room experienced silent at the two warriors sizing every different up.
They both dropped it when Shifu coughed to get their interest. He gestured on the table for Tigress and Po to take their seats. No combating you two, he stated, relating to Goku and Po. That is a time for vitamins and refreshment. We can discuss Goku and what we are going to do afterwards.
The two nodded and started out to consume the buffet that Mr. Ping had prepared for them. Tigress failed to devour something due to the sooner bean buns, however changed into bowled over at Poe's willingness to keep consuming regardless of his in advance meal. During the meal, Goku and Po each ate a good-sized amount of meals. They observed how lots the opposite became consuming, and they soon started to consume quicker and quicker. Nobody else observed at the start, but eventually on the rate the food became disappearing, it was hard no longer to Goku and Po notion it tasted brilliant, and the two of them were near bursting. However, due to their new determined competition, they did not need to show weakness towards the other. For this reason, they exchanged powerful glances and without taking their eyes off of every difference started out to shovel in all of the food that became in front of them. Each person watched in shock as the food quick disappeared, mainly Mr. Ping, who had in no way seen everybody put extra this amount of his meals of their mouths earlier than calling it a day. Tigress smiled at Poe's childishness and determination to appear cool to a person he did not know. It reminded her of when he had first arrived within the Jade Palace. Determined to electrify the five and maximum of all her, he instructed wild outlandish memories of while he would prepare dinner with his father within the noodle shop. She became snapped out of her nostalgic trip with the aid of the slamming down of bowls. Po and Goku had completed and were still staring every other down. "Where have been you having a starring contest while ingesting?" requested Monkey bemusedly. They both nodded without breaking touch.
Shifu rolled his eyes at the two kids, then spoke up. "Now that you are finished, it is time we located out who Goku is and wherein exactly he got here from, or might you two like to maintain displaying off?"
Po blushed. Goku wiped his mouth. "Sorry." Shifu nodded. "It does not matter. Now, Mr. Ping, could you mind staying here whilst we speak to Goku?" The goose nodded and started to clear up the cutlery and plates. Shifu stood up and gestured for the grasp and Goku to comply with him. "We will pass the Hall of Heroes to talk about this. There can be a few information there in case we need it." They entered the corridor of heroes. Zeng had completed an excellent job. The jade flooring had been sparkling and all the precious kung fu artifacts were in tip pinnacle situation. Goku couldn't take in the sensory information speedy sufficient. His head kept whipping round at an alarming fee. His gaze fell at the tapestry of Uwe and he felt a deep feel of respect toward the turtle in spite of now not understanding who he turned into or how professional he changed into. Shifu stopped at the brink of the moon pool and commenced to stare into it as though he became looking for a solution from in the waters themselves. So he stated whilst turning round to stand them all, "Does anybody have any questions for Goku before I ask him something?" "Say, Goku, what became the technique you used towards me while we had been combating in the wooded area?" asked Po. The fanboy in him turned into excited at the possibility of studying one of these flashy and devastating approach. He tried to hide his excitement, however he couldn't stop a grin from forming on his face. Shifu sighed at the seeming irrelevance of the query, but seeing how he had never seen the approach in person, he had to admit that he had by no means visible something adore it and turned into also curious on the although of it. Goku chuckled. "Oh, you suggest the Kamehameha? It is something I learned from my martial arts instructor Mutant Arshi, the Turtle Master." Shifu gasped. "Your instructor realized the turtle fashion?" Goku nodded. "Yabai." Tigress answered him. The splendid Master Uwe, she pointed on the tapestry of Uwe, changed into the most effective one for the duration of Kung Fu history, who turned into capable of study and mastered its specific fashion. Goku furrowed his forehead in confusion. What Diamine was? Shifu subtly shifted uncomfortably. he did not need to expose any signal of being upset in front of neither this newcomer or any of his college students. The reality, though, that Shifu did indeed still miss his old grasp. He died of old age years ago, Shifu stated simply. Goku appeared sympathetically at him. I'm sorry. Shifu waved his hand nonchalantly to show his reputation. It's okay, Goku, you did not understand. Goku then commenced to get excited. This guy sounds honestly sturdy. I wish I could have met him. Bo joined in, not trying to be upstaged. Nicely, I've met him and he became extremely good, he said smugly. Tigress rolled her eyes in entertainment at Po's try to provoke the boy. Shifu coughed into his hand to get Goku's interest again. What is this Kamehameha? Goku were given into the stance. I'll display you. Wait, shouldn't we try this interior, said Crane, who become ignored. Goku took a deep breath and focused his kai ka. Me, ha, me. The palace commenced to shake and a small blue of strength shaped among Goku's hands. Monkey laughed. It doesn't appear that Impri. Ha! Goku fired the beam at a bare wall. Po and the others shielded their eyes from the blinding light of the beam. Whilst the dirt had settled, the others looked at the harm achieved. The wall had been absolutely destroyed and Goku became panting closely. Why is it constantly that wall that gets destroyed? Requested Mantis to nobody especially. Shifu gasped, how are you capable of harness this sort of huge amount of kai? Goku shrugged, I do not know, I notion every person ought to do it. He wiped a bead of sweat far from his brow. Well, that one took plenty out of me. However, master, I notion we all had get right of entry to kai. Asked Viper. Shifu nodded. Indeed, Viper, however we cannot use it to the type of degree. Our kai is connected to our life pressure. Take a look at. Shifu held his palm up and commenced to focus. The others observed his frame begin to shake from the strain and his face showed clean signs and symptoms of being uncomfortable. A small ball of yellow strength exited Shifu's hand and fast evaporated. Shifu gasped and fell to his knees. Goku quickly helped Shifu again up. Master, are you adequate? Requested Tigress. They have been all amazed at Goku's selflessness to someone he had by no means met. It reminded Tigress and the five of Po. Shifu took a deep breath and stood again up. I am great, Tigress. As you could see, students, as compared to Goku's wave, my strive became pitiful. If I used any greater of my kai, it can have rendered me subconscious or catatonic. Goku scratched his head. So why am I able to use so much despite the fact that you've got all trained longer than me? I don't know, Goku. Perhaps it has something to do with your particular anatomy, or perhaps you are simply obviously talented with a huge well of kai, Shifu speculated. Till we discover a good way to get returned in your personal global, I propose you live here and train with us. As you teach here with us, maybe some of our questions will be answered. The next day we can query you more. I experience that nowadays we found out sufficient to meet our interest for some time. I bet you're longing for some training right about now, Shifu said. In fact, the purple panda had never encountered everybody just like the monkey boy and became excited at the things the boy should train both him and his students together with kai manage for a begin. Goku grinned extremely good. Mantis chuckled, watch out, Po, he's stealing your lame cattresses, he stated whilst searching at the panda. Po smiled, however, at the inside. They're no longer lame. Okay, now the panda desired a rematch. On a hill outside of the Valley of Peace. I knew if I sent the brat here, then I could get my hands on the Dragon Balls, and I know this because I am a brilliant researcher and an unrivaled mastermind. But why? The figure pointed towards his two cowering minions. Did you two follow him here? Emperor Pilaf yelled. Shu and Mai hugged each other in fear of their master's wrath. Pilaf reached into his pocket and pulled out his portal generator. He had created it in an attempt to send Goku to another dimension. With Goku gone, he would be free to take over the world. Upon inspecting the device, he saw that it had run out of battery. Luckily, it was solar powered, so the three of them just had to wait for a few days until it recharged itself. Okay, listen up, Shu and Mai, he ordered.
His minions immediately dropped the parts of their broken robot suits and stood to attention. They had already wound Emperor Pilaf up a lot just by following his earlier order of following Goku, so they didn't want to give him any more of an excuse to get overly angry about another defeat. We need to find some place to hole up until this, he gestured towards the device in his hand, has recharged itself. So I'd appreciate it if neither could ruin my plans yet again. Is that okay with you two?
The two saluted and said in unison, "Yes, Emperor Pilaf." The three villains began to walk in a direction in order to find shelter. Wow, this is incredible, Goku said in awe.
Shifu had led them into the training hall with Po and the five. Upon entering the hall, Goku had immediately started to grin like an excited idiot at the possibilities of getting stronger from using all of the dangerous and powerful looking equipment.
He looked at Po. "You use this stuff to train?"
Po nodded smugly. "Yep, as the Dragon Warrior I get to use this place every day so I can be the strongest warrior and be remembered for all of history." Tigress shook her head in amusement. "Seriously, Po, stop trying to impress him. When you first came in this hall, you ended up being beaten up by inanimate objects and being set on fire several times," she said with a smirk on her face.
Shifu and the five chuckled at her put down. Po blushed and frowned. Goku ignored the conversation. The fact that Po was trying to big himself up didn't register at all with him. "Can we start now?" Goku asked excitedly. Shifu looked at him oddly. "Goku, you realize that you still have some injuries from your fight yesterday with Po, don't you?" Goku shook his head. "I feel fine." Mantis laughed. "Ha. Looks like the kids got you beat, Po. How are you feeling?" Po huffed. He was in fact still very sore from his battle. Shifu nodded at Goku and led them all back out into the courtyard. "Okay, Goku, if you're feeling up to it." Shifu gestured towards the sparring area of the courtyard. Goku removed his power pole and threw it towards Po, who caught it with one hand. The panda began to twirl it about in his hand. Shifu smirked. "Okay, boy, which one of the Furious Five do you wish to fight? Apart from Tigress, of course you can fight." He pointed at Monkey. Master Monkey, whose fighting style dictates that he is quick, acrobatic and unpredictable. Monkey decided to show off by grabbing a staff and pulling off some impressive looking flips and tricks with it. "Or how about Master Mantis, whose size hides his strength and swiftness?" Shifu said proudly. Mantis wasn't sure whether to feel flattered or not. After all, he had just been called small by his master, who was himself very tiny. Shifu continued his odd sort of roll call with Viper. Viper's ability to contort into any shape makes her nearly impossible to hit. She uses her lightning fast reflexes to avoid blows before she counter-strikes, then, by wrapping her body around opponents' limbs, uses the opponent's energy to counter-strike with deadly efficiency. The snake beamed at Shifu's rare praise. Crane waited for his time to shine. "Finally, Crane," said Shifu. "Could you go down into the valley and guard it just in case someone tries to attack while we're distracted? If it happens, send a villager up to get us." Crane gaped at Shifu for a second before sighing, bowing and taking off into the sky. "So which of the Furious Five will it be, Goku?" Shifu asked. Po whined. "What about me?" "No, Po, we already know the result of a confrontation between the two of you. Zeng does not need any more work to add to his list of your messes." Tigress had a sneaking suspicion that regardless of his years of experience and his maturity, Shifu was just like Po, trying to impress Goku. Tigress smiled and grabbed his paw to cheer up the fuming panda. Po turned to look at her with a frown on his face. The frown quickly disappeared when he looked into her eyes. "Don't worry about it, Po, I'm not allowed to get involved either." Goku sized the three masters up. He made his decision and stood in the center of the ring. "I choose all of them," he said confidently. The three masters looked at each other like they didn't know whether Goku was serious or not. They looked at Shifu to get confirmation over what to do. The panda nodded and began to focus on the fight. Mantis, monkey and viper spread themselves out in the ring. Goku crouched down low and struck a martial arts pose, a very familiar one in fact. Shifu gasped upon recognizing it, that the turtle style. I haven't seen anyone use it since Master Uwe. He stroked his beard in deep thought. It will be interesting to see this child use one of the hardest kung fu styles to master. For Po, though it would be his first time seeing the style performed, he had never seen Uwe do it at all. He only had Shifu and the five's varying descriptions of it. Shifu stood at the head on the ring to act as the mediator. He raised his hand and looked at both parties who were gazing intently at the other. Shifu quickly swung his hand down. Begin. Monkey was first to attack. He launched himself with his tail towards Goku. The monkey boy sidestepped it and threw a quick jab to where he knew Monkey's face would be. Monkey landed and felt Goku's fist hit him in the face. It rattled the inside of Monkey's head and he started to see stars. Mantis took the opportunity to attack Goku while he was distracted with Monkey. Mantis ran at Goku and managed to land a kick to his face. Mantis gasped when he felt a sharp pain run through his small leg upon striking Goku's face. Goku stumbled and nearly fell. He managed to stand his ground however and went to counter. Goku was taken off guard by a sharp whip to the back. Viper had decided now was the time to give her allies some backup as they seemed to be struggling against one opponent. Goku gaped wordlessly at the pain. Monkey had now recovered and was getting to his feet. Viper rushed Goku again, but he was ready for her this time. He twisted his body and felt Viper fly past him almost too close for comfort. Before she had moved out of reach, Goku grabbed her tail and slammed her into the ground. Po flinched as he felt the force of the impact reverberated under his feet. Monkey and Mantis zigzagged between each other in order to disorient Goku. He wasn't fooled however, and he used Viper like a weapon, hitting the two onto the ground again. After hitting them, he threw Viper like a javelin at them. She landed with a pained grunt next to Monkey. That's nothing. Po scoffed jealously. In truth, the panda could probably beat the 5- Tigres by himself. He decided to keep his thoughts private however, as he didn't want a punishment from either Tigres or Shifu. Viper struggled to catch her breath through her winded chest. For the first time in a long time, Mantis was getting angry with a fight. He got back up hastily. I'm not gonna let some kid beat the three of us this easily. In his anger, he attacked too quickly and left himself open to Goku, simply tripping him up. Po laughed. It's not so funny now, is it, Mantis? How's the dirt tastes? Mantis got up yet again and resumed fighting. Tigres smacked him upside the head. You didn't do that much better, Po. Po rubbed his now aching head. Why'd you have to hit me there? It still hurts. Tigres smirked. Thank you for proving my point. Po pouted and resumed watching the fight. Viper and Monkey struggled to their feet, panting heavily. I'm surprised Po could even hit this guy, Monkey murmured to Viper. She nodded slowly in response. That last attack had quite literally knocked all of the wind out of her. She managed to get out a few words. You have any street strategies? Monkey thought for a second. If I throw you at him like I did with Tai Lung, he'll be too distracted to block my attack. I'm okay with losing this as long as me and you hit him at least once. Viper nodded and positioned herself appropriately. Mantis managed to connect another blow to Goku, this time in the midsection. Goku's ribs moved of their own accord and he headbutted Mantis, finally finishing the bug off. Po quickly moved over to Mantis's unconscious form and moved him out of harm's way. Goku wiped a bead of sweat away from his face. When he removed his hand, he barely had any time to react to Viper arching her body like a whip again. She managed to cut his gi along the waist. Goku yelled out in pain and clutched his side. Monkey decided to capitalize and kicked Goku roughly in the face, knocking him out of the ring. That's it, yelled Shifu, signaling the end of the battle. Monkey and Viper stumbled out of the ring celebrating their victory. I wouldn't celebrate too soon, students. After all, it took 3 of you to even land a hit on Goku. Even though you won by means of ring out, it does not mean that you were the better combatants in the fight. Monkey and Viper bowed shamefully. Shifu then smiled warmly. I am however proud of your teamwork and your fighting skill though. Viper and Monkey smirked at each other. Shifu looked at Mantis out of concern. I don't think we should fight each other again for a while. If there's an attack on the village, the only one left to defend it will be Tigress, and she's not in any position to defend herself. Tigress rolled her eyes at his overprotectiveness. Goku picked himself up and brushed the dust off of himself. You guys are really strong, Goku said happily. He didn't mind losing to an opponent or opponents in this case of such high strength. Yeah, you too, Monkey said exhausted. Shifu rubbed his hands together fulfilled. It had been nostalgic seeing his master's style being used again after a few years. I think that's enough for today. That will count as your training today. Monkey and Viper nodded. Boden walked off carrying an unconscious Mantis. Goku rubbed his side painfully. Well, Goku, seeing as we don't have anything else you are needed for today, why don't you head into the valley with Po and Tigress so they can show you around?
He looked at Tigress sternly. Make sure he gets a disguise of some kind. We don't need a panic from anybody about what he is, which we couldn't answer even if we wanted to, I don't think. With that, Shifu parted ways with the three and headed off to consult the records about an idea that he had been having.
So what do you want to do, Goku? Asked Tigress. Goku thought for a second, but his stomach answered the question for her. Could we get something to eat? I'm kinda hungry. Po looked at Tigress. Well, we kinda destroyed my dad's restaurant, so we can't go there. Why don't we just go to the barracks and I can make us all something there? Goku pouted at not being able to explore his new surroundings, but the allure of eating more of this strange new food was simply too intoxicating for him. He smirked and nodded to confirm. Tigress smiled at Po as well to show her agreement. Po led the way holding Tigress's paw while Goku brought up the rear, while all the time trying to get a glimpse of his friend's home. Goku stopped suddenly when he remembered something. Hey guys. Po and Tigress both slowed down, stopped and looked over their shoulder towards him. Yeah, what is it, Goku? Asked Tigress. After we eat, can we go find my Nimbus? Po raised an eyebrow at him. You're what? Goku walked past them with his hands behind his head, grinning like an idiot at their confusion. Oh, don't worry, you're gonna love it. Po looked at Tigress questioningly. What in the world is a Nimbus? She shrugged. I have no idea, Po. Still, it will be interesting to find out. Crane was standing outside the remains of Mr. Ping's once great noodle shop, which had been destroyed yet again by one of Po's over-the-top fights. And guess who's going to have to rebuild it again? Crane thought irritably. True, while it was always a hassle to rebuild the shop, Crane had to admit he had always felt a small sense of satisfaction when he had finished it, like an artist viewing their finished work. Crane sighed. It's kind of sad that I consider rebuilding some random restaurant as some sort of artistic statement or achievement. Russell. Crane was snapped out of his random inner ramblings by a small noise coming from the rubble of the shop. He looked around the street, which was deserted. Mr. Ping had gone to see some friends and had left Crane here by himself. Hello, the bird asked cautiously. Russell. There it goes again, he thought to himself. Russell. Crane gasped as a wave of clarity washed over him. It was coming from underneath the debris. He turned on his heel and slowly walked towards the rubble, lowered down to the ground just in case whatever it was under there wanted to attack him. He got close when the rubble started to shake and Crane was knocked on his feet by the force. A large yellow object burst out of the debris, showering both Crane and the surrounding street with wood and small bits of stone. What in the world? Crane speculated. When the dust cleared and Crane moved his hand away from his face, he gazed upon the culprit. It was a small yellow cloud floating in midair. It was almost looking at Crane with an odd sort of distaste. Without warning, it suddenly took off in the direction of the Jade Palace. Wait, come back. Crane yelled. He immediately took off after the obscure thing. Well, Shifu did send me down there in case anything weird happened, but I get the feeling that this isn't exactly what he had in mind when he gave me that order. Po, Tigress and Goku exited the barracks feeling much more full than they had before entering it. Goku was now wearing a large cloak which hid his face, body and most importantly his tail. "Wapo, you're a really good cook," Goku said cheerfully. Po smiled sheepishly. "You're just saying that, but I agree. Don't you know how to cook, Goku?" he asked innocently. Goku shook his head as they started to make their down into valley. "Nope, I always enjoyed eating the food more than I even did cooking it." He started to chuckle and Po soon joined in. Tigress smiled at the two of them, showing signs of getting on. She stopped and frowned, however, when something in the sky caught her eye. "Hey guys," she said, shifting into fight mode. Po and Goku stopped laughing and looked at her questioningly. "What is it, Tigress?" Po asked worriedly. "Is the baby coming?" Tigress looked at him bemusedly. "Po, don't be stupid. I'm only a few weeks pregnant. How is that even possible?" Po blushed at his overprotectiveness. She glanced back at the sky again, seeing the incoming object get ever closer. "No, something in the sky is heading straight for us." She put her hand over the top of her eyes, covering it from sunlight in order to get a better view of it. "It looks like some kind of projectile." The thing suddenly sped up like it had only just noticed the three of them standing there. Po immediately picked Tigress up and moved her out of its trajectory. The object suddenly crashed into Goku. Po went to help him out when he heard laughter coming from Goku. Po got a better look at the thing. It looked like some sort of large yellow cloud that could also fly. Tigress appeared by his side. "What is that?" she asked, naturally confused. Goku quickly stood back up and brushed the dirt off of himself for what seemed like the third time that day. "Nimbus!" Goku yelled happily. Tigress and Po looked knowingly at each other. "So that's a Nimbus?" Po said. Tigress simply nodded at his level of perception. Goku ran over to the cloud and leaped on it. It started to do loop-de-loops as if it was showing Goku that the feeling of joy at seeing his friend was mutual. Tigress and Po gaped at the show of flight and speed that came from the cloud. Crane landed quickly next to them. "Oh hey Crane," said Po simply while not taking his eyes off of Nimbus. "What are you doing back up here? I thought you were supposed to be down in the valley." Crane caught his breath. "I was. But that thing exploded out of the rubble that used to be your father's noodle establishment and flew towards the Jade Palace. I tracked it, then it suddenly started flying towards you guys." Goku flew Nimbus towards the ground. As he got closer, he slowed his descent and hopped off of it. "This is a Nimbus," he said proudly. He walked over to Po. Crane and Tigress with Nimbus followed closely behind him. Po went to touch the soft-looking cloud, but it moved away from him. "Where'd you get it? And what is it?" Po asked quickly. "I got it from Master Roshi. I'm not sure what it is though, it's just a cloud that flies." Po grinned like an idiot. Can I ride it?" Tigress smirked at his childishness and Crane face palmed or wing palmed. "Yeah sure," said Goku, "but you have to have a pure heart to ride it apparently." Wasting no time, Po quickly walked over to it and leaped onto it. Both Tigress and Crane closed their eyes, waiting for the inevitable sound of Po loudly and painfully crashing into the ground. They were surprised when they didn't hear any such sounds, but instead opened their eyes to see that Po was flying it around just as skillfully as Goku had been doing a couple of minutes previously. Crane looked at Tigress. "Why am I surprised? He's already got both you and inner peace. Why should he not be able to fly a magic cloud from another dimension?" Tigress smiled. "I know, there doesn't seem to be anything he can't do," she said dreamily. Crane looked at her oddly. "Wow, he's really changed you. Usually you'd be scowling into the distance and folding your arms, but you looking at Po like some over-romantic little school." Tigress cut him off by hitting him into a nearby tree. Goku and Po looked towards the sound of the noise. "He fell," Tigress said dryly. Crane groaned and clutched his head when a large apple hit him. Po suddenly had an idea. "Hey Crane." He called over to the currently grounded avian. "What, Po?" he asked, voice racked in pain. Po sat down on Nimbus and looked down towards Crane. "Why don't we have a race to see how fast you are against this Nimbus?" Rain's tolerance for getting made a fool of had peaked by this point, so he decided if he could try and win some of his honor and dignity back by beating this near inanimate mode of transport. He stood up triumphantly, the apple that had been on his head falling to the ground dramatically. Okay then, what are the rules and boundaries? He asked while taking his place next to Poe and the Nimbus Clive. Tigress sat down under the tree and relaxed. It had been a long time since she and Poe had just had a day like this where they had fun with their friends, so she decided to take as much of an advantage of the situation as she could. Goku walked up to the tree and sat cross-legged underneath its branches. Goku decided to ask something which had plagued his mind every time he had looked at Tigress. So Tigress, what's it like having a baby inside of you? He asked in his usual naive and blunt way. Tigress blanched, she caught herself and cursed internally at getting caught out yet again by Goku's childish curiosity. Meanwhile, Poe and Crane had decided what route they would take around the village 3 times to determine the winner. They took their places and set off quickly, however their intended audience was distracted. I don't really feel that different to normal really, Tigress said simply while picking at some of the grass on the ground with her claws.
The only difference really is that everyone is being overprotective and patronizing towards me. It's starting to get incredibly annoying. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm not excited. My heart flutters every time I think about it, but I miss the thrill of the chase, the thrill of battle, and the blood pumping through my veins.
Goku frowned and in a rare state of clarity spelled it out. I think that you're just afraid that you won't be at your full strength after this has passed, Goku said simply whilst staring at the ground. Tigress gaped at his odd sort of insight. She went to reply but was interrupted by Poe landing on the ground first. He flipped off the Nimbus and bowed to Tigress and Goku, who weren't paying attention. Hey guys. I won. The two of them looked at him. Poe whined, Tigress, you weren't watching. Crane landed as well, although he was a bit more worse for wear. He was panting and sweating heavily. That Cloud Eye is really, really fast. He bent over to catch his breath. Goku laughed and walked over to the cloud, which, judging by its body language, if it had a face it would probably be looking incredibly smug at this moment. Goku and the others had spent the rest of the day hanging out in the courtyard outside the Hall of Heroes, getting to know each other and learning more about each other's worlds. When it had gotten dark, they headed inside to get something to eat. Goku, Poe, Shifu, Tigress, and the Furious Five were all sat around the table in the kitchen enjoying yet another meal prepared for them by the Dragon Warrior himself. Mr. Ping had decided to stay with a fellow restaurant owner instead of struggling going up and down the 1,000 steps every day. Nimbus was also floating quietly in the corner like some sort of guard dog. Shifu and the others had been quickly brought up to speed on the why, how and where of Nimbus. Naturally, the others all viewed the magic cloud with curiosity. Shifu, however, had some questions of his own. He placed his cutlery onto the table slowly and dramatically, so Goku. Goku looked up from his meal and met the red panda's wise gaze. Yes, Shifu. In previous years, the red panda might have demanded some respect or insisted upon being called a Master Shifu, but he had been lightened up by Poe. We know who you are, no Goku, but we don't know what you are.
While you spent the day with Poe and Tigress, I went into the Hall of Heroes and went through some of our records in order to find out what exactly are you. As you can no doubt tell by our reactions to you, we have never encountered such a strange-looking being such as yourself. No offense.
Shifu looked at the table disappointingly. I couldn't find anything to do with you, not one thing. It's the only time I can remember that we've ever been let down by the records. He glanced up at Goku again, who had been listening with rapt attention with a dumpling in his mouth. I'll be blunt, what are you? Shifu said seriously. Goku swallowed the dumpling without chewing it. I'm a human being. Everyone frowned in confusion. A what? Asked Mantis, who had recovered from his earlier beatdown. A human being, Goku repeated patiently. Goku frowned. I'm sorry guys, but I'm not good with explaining stuff. My friend Bulma is much better at it than me. I'm actually different to most other humans anyway, so I'm probably not qualified to explain it to you, he sighed. How are you different? Asked Monkey. Goku's tail appeared from behind him. Nobody besides you that I've met has a tail like this. Shifu looked at Monkey curiously. I wonder, are you and Monkey connected in some way? Goku gasped when he had an idea. We could gather the Dragon Balls and ask the dragon to tell us. Everyone frowned. The Dragon Balls. What are they? Asked Viper, speaking for the group. You don't have the Dragon Balls here. Goku asked. Shifu shook his head. No, we've never even heard of them. Would you care to fill us in? The Dragon Ball are these small orange orbs that can grant you one wish when all 7 of them are gathered in one place. I was actually casually looking for one when I ended up here, Goku explained. Wish granting. Everybody thought simultaneously. What would you wish for, Po? Asked Tigress. Po thought for a second before leaning over to her. I already got what I wanted. Tigress's heart warmed at his admittedly cheesy statement. Mantis groaned. Dude, you're so lame. Freen and Monkey chuckled, but even they had to admit it was pretty sweet of the panda to say that. The romantic overtones flew over Goku's head immediately. So if there are no Dragon Balls here, then how am I supposed to get home? Honestly, Goku, I don't know, but we can talk about this tomorrow. There may be some artifact in the vaults that we can use. Had you come here a couple of months ago, there was a little stone that could have helped us return you to your proper place, but it is lost to use. Shifu stood up from the table and made to leave. I suggest that we sleep now. It has been a long day and there is a lot of ground to cover tomorrow in order to get Goku back to his world. His students bowed. Yes, Master Shifu, they said in unison. Although there was a new voice there, Shifu raised an eyebrow in surprise upon seeing that Goku had joined Shifu's students in bidding the panda good night. He merely nodded in acknowledgement, deciding to confront Goku about it tomorrow. The others copied Shifu and went to their rooms to get some sleep. Goku made sure that Nimbus followed him to the room that Goku had been allotted, and Nimbus slept in the corner that night. Tigress had been thinking for the past couple of hours now on what had been said earlier, specifically by what Goku had said. She was standing up and pacing the room. Po was asleep on the bed as he should be, as it was quite late. Tigress laid down next to Po slowly. She could feel his soothing heartbeat through his soft fur. She decided to talk to him about what Goku had brought up earlier to see what her love felt about it. Po, are you awake? She said softly. In response, Po started to snore. Tigress turned over and shook him softly. It didn't work, so she decided to wake him up by means of a less goodwill approach. She leaned near his ear and whispered, Po, I need you. He got up like a shot and struck a pose to fight off the supposed would-be attackers. Upon seeing that there wasn't nobody there, he yawned and turned irritably towards a guilty-looking Tigress. What did you do that for? Po said sleepily whilst rubbing his sleep-filled eyes. Tigress bit her lip. I want to talk to you about something, Po. I'm sorry for waking you up. Po saw how sad she looked, so he immediately sat down, grabbed her paws and immediately paid attention. Tigress was flattered at him taking something so small about her so seriously. Well, Po, the thing is, do you think I'll still be a good kung fu master after the baby is born? I mean, it's going to take a long time for me to get back into shape. Do you think that I'll still be able to protect the valley? Po gaped at her. I didn't know you felt this way. Honestly, it doesn't matter if you are or not. To me at least, you'll always be tough and an awesome kung fu master, but yes, I do think that you will still be able to protect the valley. After all, you'll be fighting for more than the villagers. You'll be fighting for me and our baby. I know from experience, Tigress, that fighting for you makes me stronger than I've ever been. I mean, look how I fought Goku yesterday. I never would have been able to beat him if I didn't think that he was going to hurt you or the baby in some way. Tigress beamed at him. Thank you, Po. Po nodded and hugged her. I love you, he said with a ton of warmth in his voice. I love you too, she replied, although, for being so nice to me, I think I can show it in a different way, she said seductively. Po smiled at her as they embraced. Some days later, come on, you could do it. Simply concentrate. Bo's forehead furrowed in concentration. He had his palm held out in the front of him and his toes unfolded out under him. Shifu, Tigress and the others have been looking from the sidelines in the courtyard outdoor of the schooling corridor. For the past couple of days Goku were trying to educate his new pals within the art of Kai control.
None of them up to now were capable of shape any kind of ball of electricity regardless of how tough they concentrated. Glaringly due to the pressure had to try the approach best. Certainly one of them did it according to day and they best attempted it as soon as.
To do it extra times would danger damage or catatonia. They had started with Monkey who couldn't produce whatever, then Mantis who nearly did it however could not maintain it up and passed out. Crane changed into next and prefer Monkey didn't even get close. Viper was final.
The others had felt the strength coming off of her, however the shape of her frame regarded to disrupt the drift of Kai for some purpose. Even Shifu became puzzled as her form might have given the idea that Kai could have flowed better interior of her than inside one of the other masters. Shifu did not take part because it took loads out of him simply to supply something tiny as seen in advance, however also because the stress of it might have been too much for his older frame and triggered him in contamination or some type of assault. Po growled in frustration at his lack of any type of result. The others were amazed. Clearly out of they all Po could produce some form of strength seeing as how he changed into the mythical dragon warrior. All and sundry had almost misplaced interest till a yellow mouth started out to shape out of his palm. Its glow had a odd charm to it. Love it changed into almost as heat and welcoming because the panda generating it. Po smirked with relief and began to recognition on maintaining the power. Exceptional paintings, Po. Stated Crane supportively. Shifu smiled proudly at his college student's fulfillment. Mantis grumbled jealously, Monkey raised his fist triumphantly and Viper simply smiled warmly. Tigress looked in awe at the strength that was radiating off of Po. She ought to experience the earth shake under her. Shifu's Kai hadn't been that outstanding and he had been a kung fu master for decades. Po have to just be clearly gifted at it as typical. He genuinely does research rapid when he places his thoughts to it, she pondered. Po turned into nearly there till he gasped and fell to his knees panting heavily. Tigress and the others immediately ran over to ensure that he became adequate. The yellow power without delay dissipated. Goku checked out where it had vanished. Wow, he managed to do that on his first strive. I can see why Po became chosen as this a dragon warriors. He become delivered again to Earth through Tigress's issues. Po, are you good enough? Tigress asked worriedly. Po nodded and attempted to stand up, his legs buckled up from under and he fell into her arms. Yeah, I am just wiped though, he heaved. Goku knelt next to him. You have been so near, Po. I may want to feel the energy pouring out of you. It turned into actually cool. He stated excitedly. Po smirked. Yeah, properly, just provide me some time and I'll be going for walks jewelry around you shorty. Shifu stepped up. Monkey, Mantis and Crane take Po to his room so he can recover. The three masters bowed and obliged. Monkey took one shoulder and Crane took the alternative and the four men all went to Po's room. Shifu became closer to Goku. I assume this is enough for today, Goku. I won't have every person able to guard the Valley of Peace if my college students are all exhausted, Shifu commentated dryly. Goku nodded and he. Shifu and Viper went to walk lower back to the barracks to check on Po properly. Tigress hung again, which become noticed by means of Shifu. You aren't coming with us to test on Po, Tigress? He requested worriedly. Tigress frowned at being caught out. Yes, I'm Master Shifu. I simply desired to check something first, after which I will catch up to you. Shifu stood ready, privately Tigress emphasized. Shifu nodded understandingly and left with the opposite tool. Tigress knew she should not be straining herself, however she simply had to recognize something. Tigress speedy take a look at to ensure that no person became spying on her indiscriminately. She spread her feet apart,
held out her palm and replicated the stance that Goku had taught Po most effective moments in the past. She quickly found out collecting Kai changed into plenty extra tough that it looked. She ought to experience the attempt taking its toll on her muscle groups and frame. She unexpectedly felt a surge of strength drift through her arm and out of her palm. In addition to Po, the power got here out of her hand and settled nearly right away. Tigress panted heavily and smirked at getting it right on the primary try. The little orange ball bobbed about on her hand before quick dissipating. If I teach in non-public like this, then I is probably able to make it finally bit longer. She wiped a bead of sweat away from her forehead and went to live viaduct pose facet whilst he recovered. Tigress needed to admit that the aggressive aspect of her turned into happy that she had controlled to upstage Po in something, even supposing no one but come there to observe her do it. It turned into sufficient to realize that something that Po couldn't do she should. She gasped whilst she suddenly had an idea. Could should the toddler be adding it is Kai to mine, and that is why I am able to do that. People might clearly produce more Kai than others obviously, however I'm just a few weeks pregnant, surely it cannot already be generating Kai. Well, I think Kai is given early. But how come I will do it and Po cannot? He's the dragon warrior. I realize I'm higher with intellectual acuity as verified viaduct master Ding, but still. Tigress' notion of Po, and determined to cast the idea out of her thoughts, she might ask Shifu later. Tigress padded softly away to enroll in her beloved and the relaxation of her friends. Pilaf, Shu and Mai had been camped out in a cave that had taken them days to find. Because of the harm achieved to it, Pilaf's portal generator changed into taking a fairly long time on the way to rate back up again. It had been damaged by Pilaf dropping it onto the floor after falling over. Some way it had ended up being Shu's fault, but the sounds of their hungry stomachs rumbling reverberated at some point of the cave. Pilaf became looking to fix the tool to make it price faster. Shu and Mai were simply staring into the heart they these days created. Pilaf became slowly getting more and more agitated by the sounds of silence and hunger. Right on agenda, it passed off again. He threw the device to the ground in frustration and stood up quick. Can you two just move and spot where this cave leads? I'm able to slightly listen due to the noise you idiots are making. Shu and Mai blinked stupidly at him before nodding, lighting fixtures a stay with hearth and walking closer to the return of the cave. They may pay attention, Pilaf's grumbling even from a long way away. They walked for what felt like hours till they got here throughout the cease of the cave.
My side, seems like there is not anything right here, Shu. Now we've got to move back to Pilaf and pay attention how it is our fault that this cave is pretty lots empty.
Shu went to agree, but his eye became stuck through a peculiar symbol at the wall. It was some kind of person with an inscription beneath it. The canine ninja bent all the way down to try to study it. Shio Hu Hua. In blood red letters. Monkey and Crane located Po slowly onto his bed. The panda had passed out on the manor there, which had only made carrying the massive panda return to his room all the more tough. Monkey gasped and collapsed. I swear he's gotten heavier. Crane fell next to him. Yeti bird huffed. Crane grinned to himself. What's up, Monkey? Yeti Golden Languor answered. Po's out and nobody's right here, Crane said mischievously. Monkey Speedy stuck on and laughed heavily. They grabbed some paints that Po used for his movement figures and stood over the unaware panda, but a couple of firm fingers grabbed them from at the back of the paint fell onto the ground.
Great strive, men, however you will need to be a good deal quieter to get to Po Viaduct, me stated Tigress whilst smirking heavily at them. She threw them out of the open door and that they collapsed in a heap outside.
She sat on the ground subsequent to him and waited for him to wake up. Relatively as soon as she sat down, he opened his eyes slowly. Tigress smiled at his goofy expression. Hiya, dragon warrior, she said softly. How lengthy became I at? Po requested groggily. Now not lengthy. Monkey and Crane simplest simply struggled to get you in right here. Tigress got up and laid next to Po. I can produce Kai now too, she stated happily. Po gaped at her. Ha. Whilst did you do that? I attempted it as soon as every person left. I copied your stance and that I did it faster you then. Tigress tried to keep all of the pleasure and cockiness out of her voice, regardless some of it managed to slip in. Poe smiled at her, first class process he then frowned, simply be careful, if it can knock me out then you don't know what it may be doing to you or you recognize the bee. You do not have to fear Poe, I may not do it again for some time, it will not hurt me. Paul shook his head. I understand you will be satisfactory. You are the fearsome and exquisite Master Tigress. He placed a hand on her stomach. It is just this I am worried about. Tigress smirked at him. Do you know the way appealing that is to pay attention? You speak so protectively. She purred. Paul blushed. I'm able to nonetheless by no means recover from listening to you speak like that to me. It became only ultimate 12 months that I was simply your friend. Tigress smiled and were given up off of the mattress. I will get you something to devour after which we will communicate more, Dragon Warrior. Her tail swished seductively as she walked out. Poe blushed and smirked to himself. He placed his hands behind his head and sighed fortunately. I do not know what has gotten into her recently but I'm now not complaining. 5 minutes in the past Chifu led the others to the schooling hall. I want all you to work on bodily schooling. Like I stated, day after today we will try Kai training once more. The livid 5 bowed and began their education. Goku walked as much as Shifu and bowed. What approximately me, master? Shifu smiled at his politeness. Goku, I am now not your grasp and you do not must talk over with me as such. I wanted to invite you something concerning Poe's abilities, is that okay? Goku nodded. I do not see why now not, although you probably recognize greater approximately him than I do. Shifu and Goku left the education hall and went to the kitchen in which Shifu knew that they wouldn't be disturbed. They both sat down. What I desired to realize is whether or not Poe's species could have any effect on his capability to harness Kai or whether it would have any effect on the quantity that he should store in his frame. Goku shrugged. I don't know, in which I come from animals cannot sincerely harness Kai so I cannot solution that for you. Shifu raised his eyebrow in confusion. What's an animal? Goku blinked on the purple panda stupidly. Nicely it's, never mind he said in defeat. He wouldn't realize a way to explain that this international turned into inhabited to animals. All I certainly realize approximately manipulating Kai is that some human beings are obviously gifted at it and a few humans aren't. My buddy Krillin is actually excellent at it and no one knows why. I assume he simply practices lots. Shifu stroked his beard in concept. It seems it's simply something else that Poe is certainly good at, he sighed. It is frustrating sometimes that he simply attains competencies like this and while he learned inner peace last year. Goku scratched his head. What's inner peace? Shifu positioned his fingers together. Internal peace is the capacity to harness the waft of the universe, permitting one to do the reputedly impossible. Internal peace should be done, which is possible through many various ways. 1. The first and most commonplace approach to reaching it's far to meditate for 50 years without consuming or ingesting in a cave. Some other way, he exact, is to bear pain and struggling. This is the way both Poe and I carried out it. Goku nodded and absorbed the facts. He turned into about to answer but changed into interrupted with the aid of Tigress getting into the kitchen. What's up, Tigress? Is our dragon warrior feeling higher? Requested Shifu. Tigress nodded. He turned into nonetheless asleep after I left him, she lied. Shifu saw through it but decided to now not bring it up. He reasoned that they have been in all likelihood having a few on my own time. I used to be simply getting something to eat after which going back to him, she persevered. Shifu nodded. Tigress grabbed some leftover dumplings that had been at the aspect and left the two in the kitchen. To be honest, Tigress had grabbed the meals specially for herself. She turned into beginning to get a longing for them. Later that day Poe stirred and flinched in his sleep. He was having a nightmare. He'd had some a couple of weeks in the past, however this changed into for an entirely one of a kind reason. Bo's dreams Kapipo stood inside the middle of a field with the bodies of his enemies surrounding him. Ta Lung, Shen, Liu, Tati, Timotei and even his evil self. Bo felt not anything however delight closer to their deaths. He looked at his paws and noticed that they have been caked in dry blood. He heard a pant and regarded up quickly. He saw Tigress and a small Panger girl looking up in fear toward him. Tigress had one paw over her mouth and the opposite pushing the girl in the back of her. The Panger changed into gripping Tigress's leg fiercely out of fear. Bo felt a twinge of hurt at his own family being terrified of what he had carried up. Ho took a step closer and that they sponsored a way extra. Tigress, Bo stated softly, she picked the lady up. Live again, you monster. She yelled in panic, you're no longer the panda I fell in love with, you're only a cruel beast who knows nothing but ache and destruction. Bo felt a shard of ice pierce his heart. It pained him beyond belief to listen Tigress talk like that in the direction of him. His fingers fell through his sides in defeat and Po felt a tear run down his face. Gasp! Po wakened and bolted up into a sitting roll. He checked in which he became and grew to become to quickly take a look at on Tigress. He could have wept with relief at because she changed into still viaduct his aspect purring lightly absolutely oblivious to his panicked situation. He laid back off and wrapped his arms around her. She set free a gentle purr and nuzzled his arm. Bo tried to get again to sleep however those stressful images kept popping returned into his mind's eye. He removed his hands from Tigress's form. She frowned in her sleep however Po failed to see, and were given up out in their mattress. He decided to go and sit down through the sacred peach tree of expertise with a view to clean his thoughts earlier than returning again right here. He stretched his arms and softly opened the door and padded out. His actions did not cross completely ignored however as across the hall Goku heard the panda get up and go away his room. Goku determined to comply with the panda to look what become up with him. He desired to be Po's pal so he decided to simply move for it. Goku jumped out of the bed stealthily, positioned his Tiantus on and repeated Po's technique of transferring the door open as quietly as he could and following the dragon warrior down the hallway toward the sacred peach tree of wisdom. Po trudged up the mountain path in the direction of the sacred peach tree. He hadn't been upright here in a while and he had forgotten how steep the route up toward the sacred tree can be. Po threw himself down into a sitting roll beneath its branches. Even though approximately getting a peach to devour however his nightmare had completely tired his urge for food which in Po's case changed into typically a trademark of the way critical or unimportant the state of affairs become. His belly rumbled on the contrary but so Po reached up and plucked a peach from a department. He hadn't eaten one in goodbye that he had forgotten how high quality that they tasted. He took a huge chew out of it and savored the wealthy, candy tastes. He seemed up into the night sky. The celebrities were out and illuminated the scenery with a heavenly white. Po was startled by Goku's sudden look. Hi Po, what's up? Goku requested. Po gasped and nearly choked at the peach he became eating. Po coughed it up and checked out Goku in embarrassment. In reaction Goku just acted nonchalant in the direction of how a whole lot he had fearful Po. Goku sat down subsequent to Po below the tree. Why are you sitting out right here through yourself? Did that Kai training hurt you so horrific which you can't sleep? Po shook his head. No, he said in reality. An awkward silence fell among them. Po wanted to talk to a person approximately what he were dreaming about. He could not burden Tigress with it. She wasn't in any condition to be careworn out viaducted and he did not feel relaxed telling any of the Furious Five. Shifu become also out due to the fact Po had already talked to him approximately nightmares before and did not want to seem redundant. Mr. Ping also had enough on his plate at the moment too with having to run the noodle keep with the aid of himself. Po swallowed his delight and decided to trust Goku, except he would possibly realize the solution to his worries. Po checked out Goku critically. Have you ever needed to kill someone? He asked quietly. Goku gasped, then frowned angrily. Of course I haven't, I best combat for the laugh of it, I might in no way kill a person in cold blood. He gaped in cognizance, wait you have not have you? Po looked into the valley under, I killed someone who murdered my entire race. Well you had a reason Po, now he might not be capable of hurt anyone else Goku admonished. Po did not flow his gaze in any respect, I'm quite positive I killed an insane destiny version of myself. He looked at Goku's careworn expression, it is not as complicated because it sounds believe me. And just a few weeks in the past I killed someone named Liu who became threatening Tigris. I had no desire there wasn't any other manner. Po sighed. As opposed to locating a peaceful manner out of war I just take lives. I have performed horrific matters to help the humans I really like, does that make me a bad man or woman? I consider the sensation of delight I felt while he died, the easiness of the way I did it. Goku, it is getting less difficult. He looked again at Goku again, this time his eyes extensive with worry and unhappiness. I've were given a kid on the manor, a tear fell from Po's eye. I'm scared that once it will become too smooth my child could be too afraid of me or assume that what I'm doing is right. I am Tigris won't recognize me anymore. Goku stood up and placed his hand on Po's shoulder. It seemed extraordinary seeing as Po's shoulder dwarfed Goku's small hand. You're an excellent individual. Horrific human beings don't sense bad for the matters they have performed. What you're doing is the proper issue. What if you had spared Liu, could he have accomplished the equal aspect for you? Po shook his head, no, he hated me, not anything I stated or offered him made him do not forget a one-of-a-kind direction. Goku nodded, exactly, you are now not doing it out of spite however due to the fact there is not some other way. Po smiled warmly at him, thank you Goku, his smile fast diminished. I made a promise once I have become the dragon warrior after defeating my first enemy Tai Lung. What was it? Asked Goku. Po regarded out onto the valley once more, by no means merciless nor cowardly. Never give up and by no means provide in, I have not betrayed that promise yet so I suppose I'm okay. Po stood up geared up to get back to the individual that supposed most to him inside the entire of China. Thanks Goku for speaking to me, while it isn't right my sense of right and wrong is now clearer. I promise I will usually do what it takes to defend the ones I like, whatever guilt and despair I feel from my choices will be my burden and praise for assisting them and what? It is worth it to look that they are secure. Goku smiled, no hassle Po, I don't know what you need to do to get the Dragon Warrior title however I think that you deserve it. We don't need to compete in opposition to every other, I am your buddy for however lengthy I am here for.
Po smirked, I want a rival Goku. My most effective different rival is presently slumbering in my mattress sporting my child so she's out of the picture. Po shrugged jokingly and walked off. I hope you're up to it kid. Being the rival of the legendary Dragon Warrior isn't any smooth mission.
Goku laughed and ran beyond him. As a minimum I can walk up a flight of stairs without getting out of breath. Po growled, why you little? I will get you day after today you little jerk. Now that Po was alone he looked up closer to the peach tree. He smiled lamentably. Anything it takes. Po walked slowly lower back to Tigris and his offspring. The end. Thanks for watching.